Vision recording. All right. So good morning, everyone. So in the last session, we learned the Renaissance and the Baroque and the Rococo art, right? And today, we're gonna see the modern art movement in 19th and 20th century. So the modernity in Europe and North America reflected the emergence of a new kind of society in the wake of the French, American, and the Industrial Revolution. Good morning. Driven by technological process and characterized by rapid change, the 19th century gave birth to our industrialized middle-class culture of mass production and mass advertising and mass consumption, including the mass consumption of leisure activities such as shopping, going to entertainments, and visiting art museums. So the art museums themselves were a development of the 19th century, and they made art available to the public in a way we now take for granted. So the first national museum was this one, Louvre Museum in Paris. So that is the beginning of the modern art. Okay, Michelle, I got it. Let me take a picture. So in the last session, the Renaissance art and the Baroque and the Rococo art was belonging to the church or the nobility. But now in the modern era, art was now for everybody, no longer by the church or by the nobility. So that is the point in the modern art. So let's see the modern art timeline. So many of scholars agree that modern art started from here, the foundation of the Louvre Museum in 1793. And it ended after World War II. So like this, modern art ended to the about the after World War II, and then the modern art is divided by two period. So there is a avant-garde. So that means the newest art movement. So it's divided like the before the avant-garde movement and then after the avant-garde movement, like this. So let's just talk about the background, how to divide that in the art movement in the modern art. So we learned photography before, right? And the first photograph in the world, daguerreotype, came out to the world during this modern time. As photograph had developed, many artists abandoned the traditional art style and they tried new art styles because the traditional art was not meaningful anymore thanks to the invention of a camera, right? So that also happened during this time period. But the beginning of the modern art movement here were still based on the realistic, the observational styles, and their art were totally based on the observation. So because photographs development was just baby steps, and it wasn't threatening for the painters. However, after the daguerreotype, the photographs development was accelerated, and by 1888, Kodak invented a portable camera, and everyone could record their mundane life. So artists needed something new rather than the realistic art. So that art movement is called avant-garde. Means newest art. So and after avant-garde, here, the art history began to write a totally different story. So now let's see the what kind of art movement was exposed in this modern period. So before the avant-garde, there were three major art movements, like realism, impressionism, and post-impressionism.
The vehicle, go find your sons. Go get sons.
And again, before the avant-garde, most of the art movement is still based on the observations and the realism. So these three art movements are very realistic. So there were realism, impressionism, and post-impressionism art movement arose before the avant-garde. And let's see the after avant-garde. There are diverse art movements, like Fauvism, Expressionism, Cubism, Futurism, Dada, Surrealism, and Idealism. So this art style is totally different from the observational style. So let's see this first three art movement before the avant-garde first. Let's see the realism. A number of artists broke away from the traditions of earlier 18th and 19th century art to create objective representations of the real world. The movement called realism refers specifically to writers and artists in France who were concerned about achieving social change after the revolution of 1848. So the realist artist sought to depict the everyday and the ordinary, like the real world, rather than the historic, the heroic, or the exotic. So their works unmasked for art viewers the true lives of the middle and lower classes. That is the difference. No. So the Renaissance and the Baroque and the Rococo art was focused on the nobility and the biblical episode, right? But the realism in the modern artists, they were focused on the middle and the lower classes. So we saw this work when we learned printmaking chapter. So this is a realism artist, Honor Dermier's lithography printing work of art. We saw this work, when we learned contextual analysis before, right? So he recorded a historically terrible event in this work. So we're gonna just skip this work because we've learned this background of this work. So let's see, everyone. Let's see this painting closer. So what can you see in this painting? What kind of happening or things the artist depict? Okay, Maria.
People working, and maybe they could be immigrants.
Yes, very good. They're working. They're working. That is the really important point. So this painting, stonebrokers, was shocking for its depiction of working class people on a large size canvas, a scale normally reserved for the heroic subject matter of history paintings, right? But Corvet's painting, this painting, highlights the backbreaking, monotonous work of the poor. The breaking of stones was a job taught by older generations to young men, and it was a job a man would have for a lifetime. The painting shows an older worker and his young assistant as powerful and unrelenting qualities that alarmed the upper classes. And a year before Corvet painted this work, in the revolution working condition and to low pay. And let's move on to the next art movement, Impressionism, before the avant-garde art movement. So the artists who came to be called Impressionists worked in individual, sometimes very different styles, but they were united in rejected the formal approach of the art taught in the academy in Paris. So the academy was belonging to the nobility, or they're like the kings, So was the academy's art was focused on the history and the heroic subject matter, but the Impressionist artists were different. So their art attempted not so much to portray exactly and realistically such scenes as a landscape or life in the city, as to capture the show, the light and the sensations produced by the scene. And the Impressionists formed a group to show their work together outside the official salon, like the gallery, in 8 exhibitions held between 1874 and 1886. So their subject matter was scenes of everyday life, just like the realism artists, like the rulers' landscapes and the life in the modern and growing cities of France. Impresses were often intent on capturing the essence of moment in time. Before the Impressionist, artists who followed traditional method of painting gave their work a smooth surface. But the Impressionists, on the other hand, chose to reveal their brush stroke like this, an almost sketchy, unfinished appearance of many Impressionist work break away from the academic tradition of implying creating an illusion of three-dimensional space on canvas. Instead, Impressionists flattened the space, welcomed the texture created by the paint, and often allowed the canvas to be seen beneath the painting. Many Impressionist paintings do indeed have an apparently unfinished quality, because the artists are interested in capturing instantaneous moments rather than creating a highly finished, technically flawless piece of work. So we're going to see the 3 Impressionism artists here. This is the first artist, Edouard Manet. Edouard Manet, he was a French modernist painter, and he was one of the first 19th century artists to paint modern life, and a pivotal figure in the transition from realism to the Impressionism. So now let's see this painting. Let's talk about this painting. So can you read this painting, everyone? What can you see? in this painting?
Are they having like a picnic?
Yes, they're having a picnic. That's right. Yes. Anything else?
I mean, why one of the women's are naked?
Yeah.
I think that's the focal point of the whole painting.
Very good point, Mira. Yes. It seems like odd, right? Yes. It doesn't look natural. Yeah. Very good. So Manet's paintings are actually harder to read. For this painting, just, Mira said, why this front woman is naked and posed like that? And where is she looking at? It seems like, she's staring at us, right? And why these two men are dressed up and act like there are only two of them here? And it seems like, oh, there's one more woman back there. And is she taking a bath there? It seems like, there is no relationship between the figures. Manet's painting is odd. It's very odd. And art historians still debate just what he meant by it. In modeling his figures, he focused on the highest and the lowest values, and all but the eliminating the middle and transitional tones. So as a result, forms such as the nude woman's body appear flattened as though illuminated by a sudden flash of light. So I'm gonna share a video to see this work of art closer.
In the Musée d'Orsay, looking at Déjeuner sur l'herbe, lunching on the grass.
By Manet, although it didn't originally have that title. Its first title was The Bath.
And there is really neither bathing nor a luncheon going on. There is a woman in the distance in the water. There is some fruit and a brioche, a roll in the foreground. So perhaps a remnant of a lunch, but that's not what this painting is about.
But it's very difficult to determine precisely what this painting is about, and I think that's part of the point. The painting was exhibited not at the official salon sanctioned by the Royal Academy of Fine Arts, the authority for art. Instead, this was exhibited at the Salon des Refusés.
The Salon des Refusés was set up by Emperor Napoleon III because so many works of art had been excluded from the official salon. But even though this painting was in the exhibition of rejected artwork, it still caused a storm of controversy based both on what was being portrayed, but also its painting technique, how it was portrayed.
These figures are clearly modern Parisian figures.
And that's the problem.
They're not set far away in ancient Greek and Roman mythology or set back in time. These are figures clearly wearing fashionable Parisian clothing, except, of course, the nude woman, which is the other part of the problem.
By placing a woman who is nude in this context, and because she's not veiled or distanced by mythology, she's not a nymph in a classical grove, she is actually a recognizable figure. This is Manet's model, Victorine Moron. And because the two men are also recognizable figures, there is an immediacy here that creates a degree of discomfort for the viewer.
These figures don't look idealized. They don't look timeless. They look like actual people you would see on the streets of Paris. The other significant problem with these three figures is that no one seems to be truly interacting. The nude female figure looks directly out at us in a gaze that is very nonchalant and yet very direct.
Which is also breaking with tradition. In the rare instances where a nude female figure would look out toward the audience, it might be with a coy look. But here there is a figure that's returning the viewer's gaze.
And then we have the two male figures. The figure on the right gestures toward the figure in the center, but the figure in the center seems to gaze absently out of the painting and doesn't seem to return the figure on the right's gesture and conversation. And then we have this odd figure in the background who's spatially too large for where she should be in the middle ground.
There are all kinds of spatial problems here that Manet has built in. These are not happenstance, these are purposeful. For example, the woman in the background seems to reach down to scoop something out of the water, but in fact, she seems to be reaching down to the thumb of the man in the foreground, collapsing the last traces of the illusion of depth.
We also have figures who are rendered very flatly. So, for example, the nude female figure is not modeled with that lovely movement from light to dark that would give her a sense of three-dimensionality that is typical of representations of the female nude historically. Critics noted that she seemed to have a kind of studio lighting about her instead of the natural outdoor light of where she's located.
There is some minor modeling around the breast, under the thigh, but for the most part, she looks like she's a flat cutout.
And even those shadows are very dark. There's almost a sense of her being outlined in dark grays and blacks instead of a lovely soft modeling. Overall, the handling of paint, whether we're looking at the grass in the foreground or the meadow in the distance, it's incredibly loosely brushed. There's no sense of finish. And for paintings that were approved by the jury for the Royal Academy, having a painting that was really worked on, where there was no sense left of the hand of the artist, that was the priority. And Manet's just flagrantly disregarding that. We also have a figure who seems naked and not nude. And that's because we have her discarded clothing, including her hat in the foreground, and the fact that she's wearing a kind of ribbon. So we feel as though she's a modern Parisian woman who has discarded her clothing and not Venus, born nude naturally from the sea.
She's not an allegorical figure. She's not a mythological figure. She's somebody who has taken off her dress.
Manet is very consciously drawing on the tradition of art history here.
He understood traditional art. He had copied paintings at the Louvre.
And so this painting is based directly on at least two sources, a painting that was thought to be by Giorgione, now understood to be by Titian in the Louvre, which similarly shows two clothed male figures and two nude female figures in a beautiful landscape.
But Déjeuner sur l'Herbe is also inspired by a work by Raphael that Manet had seen through an engraved copy showing the Judgment of Paris. And in the lower right corner of that engraving were two river gods and a nymph. And it was that composition that Manet has borrowed.
So we can easily understand the reactions of the French public in 1863 when they went to the Salon des Refuses. In fact, Manet was cultivating their confusion. This refusal to tell a story is a refusal to do precisely what the Academy and especially the art-going public wanted from a painting.
Manet is teasing his viewers. He's giving all of the indications that there's a narrative and yet not including that narrative. And so the subject is then no longer what is being enacted, but rather the act of creating a work of art itself, the choices that he's making as an artist to his brushwork, to his composition.
He is making a challenge to the authorities that controlled art in France and making a strong declaration. I am the one who makes these decisions for my art.
And that forceful declaration will have a tremendous impact on the development of modernism in the late 19th century and into the 20th century.
All right, so how was it? Does it help that you understand this word?
It does help a little bit now. Like there's a story, but there's not a story.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it's more fun when there's speculation.
Mm-hmm. All right. So let's move on. We saw this work, right? When we learned the what's the chapter? The analysis chapter, right? So I'm gonna skip this painting. All right, and let's move on to the next Impressionist artist, Claude Monet. Claude Monet stands like no other painter for the Impressionist style, and as the French master of light, he was also a central pioneer of 20th century painting. When Monet traveled to Paris to visit the Louvre Museum, he witnessed painters copying from the old masters. However, Monet brought his paints and other tools with him and sit by a window, not the mastered paint, and paint what he saw out there. So Monet was in Paris for several years and met several painters who would become friends and fellow impressionists. One of those friends was Edward Manet. This painting's title is Impression Sunrise. So this is a painting by Claude Monet, and he had shown at the what he would become known as the exhibition of the Impressionists in Paris in April 1874. So this painting is credited with inspiring the name of the Impressionist movement. Impression Sunrise depicts a port in Monet's hometown. Monet painted the same subject in many times because the lights and sceneries are different by the time, by the day, and by the weather. And he liked to paint the nature views outside to capture all the difference of lighting while he was painting. And this is another beautiful landscape painting. And he used brush stroke speed to show the time. Through this painting, he even could feel we even could feel the windy weather through the brush strokes. Monet was diagnosed with nuclear cataracts in both eyes in 1912 at the age of 72. I'm sorry. And his visual problems began much earlier. Soon after the age of 65, he began to experience changes in his perception of color. In his eye, everything looked blurry and yellowish and brownish to him. After he was diagnosed with cataracts, he spent most of his time at his garden. So this is his garden. And he left so many beautiful garden landscape paintings, and he died at 86. I'm gonna share a video to see his beautiful garden with his painting. All right, so now let's move on to the third Impressionist artist, Auguste Renoir. So Auguste Renoir was a French artist who was a leading painter in the development of the Impressionist style. He depicted beauty and especially feminine sensuality. So this painting is one of the Impressionism's most celebrated masterpieces. The painting depicts a typical Sunday afternoon at the original Moulin de Regret in the district of Montmartre in Paris. In the late 19th century, working class Parisians would dress up and spend time there dancing, drinking, and eating. And he left so many beautiful portrait paintings like this. So look at the brush strokes on her hair. So it looks very soft, but every single strokes are alive. And this is another portrait. This portrait painting is unusual style. The composition is not focusing on the figure nor the landscape. Even the kid doesn't show a full torso in this painting. He tried the unique portrait style in this painting. And Renoir showed completed technique as impressionist through his all of the paintings. And there is a video about his life with his masterpiece.
Professor, can you go back to the last screen so this I could just screenshot it?
Which one?
Okay, I thought I missed them.
Okay, so there is a video about his life with his masterpieces in the middle room. So please watch the video to fully understand this artist. And now let's move on to the third modern art movement before the avant-garde, post-impressionism. So the next generation of artists admired many aspects of impressionism, especially its brightened palette and direct painting technique. But they reacted in various ways to what they perceived as its shortcomings. So their styles are so highly personal that we commonly group them together under the neutral term post-impressionist, meaning simply the artist who came after Impressionism. So we are going to see three Impressionism artists. The first artist is Georges Seurat, and the next artist is Vincent van Gogh, and the last artist is Paul Gauguin. So let's see the first artist, Georges Seurat. Georges Seurat wanted to place Impressionism's intuitive recording of optical sensations on a more scientific footing. So his reading of color theories led him to develop the technique of the pointillism. Now, we saw his work before. The pointillism in which decorated dots and dashes of pure complementary colors were supposed to blend in the viewer's eyes. So this work. So we learned his artistic technique in visual elements chapter, right? For the optical color mixture. He painted all the colors with color dots, but he didn't use direct colors. He used optical color mixture. So for example, to make green color, he used yellow dots and blue dots. And when the lots of color dots put together, they create new color in the viewer's eyes. Now let's move on to the next post-impressionist artist, Vincent van Gogh. Vincent van Gogh was a Dutch post-impressionist painter who is among the most famous and influential figures in the history of Western art. In just over a decade, he created about 2,100 artworks, including around 860 oil paintings. That's a lot. That's crazy, actually. Most of which date from the last 2 years of his life. They include landscapes, still lifes, portraits, and self-portraits, and are characterized by bold colors and dynamic, impulsive, and expressive brushwork that contributed to the foundations of modern art. Sadly, he was not commercially successful, and he suicided at 37, came after years of mental illness and poverty. So this is the Starry Night, which is one of the most recognized paintings in the history of Western culture. It describes the view from the east-facing window of asylum room just before sunrise with the addition of an ideal village. This is his self-portrait when he had ear. And this is his bedroom painting. There is a video about this painting in detail, so please watch it. This video after the meeting. It's in the model room. This is another his self-portrait painting after he lost his ear. He began to hallucinate and suffered attacks in which he lost, excuse me, consciousness. During one of these attacks, he used the knife to cut his ear himself.
Wait, why he cut his ear? I'm sorry.
He cut his ear because of the hallucinate, and that was suffered. He was suffered attacks from the mental illness, because he listened to continuous sound from his ears, so he lost his mind and he cut his ear himself. Yeah. So he could later recall nothing about the event, after he cut his ear. Yeah. All right. So now let's move on to the third post-impressionism artist, Paul Gauguin. Paul Gauguin worked in an impressionist style early in his career. Gauguin was interested in expressing a spiritual meaning in his art. All these he sought on the sun-drenched island of the South Pacific, where he journeyed to escape what he called the disease of civilization. So this is one of his famous painting, Titan. The brilliant high key colors of his Titan paintings reveal his depth to impressionism. To this lightened palette, he added his own innovations, flattened form and broad color areas, and a strong outline, and the tertiary colors harmonies, a taste for the exotic, and an aura of mystery, and a quest for the primitive. The woman's pose is derived from the Egyptian art, the legs shown in profile and the shoulders depicted frontally. And Gauguin believed that European art had been in thrall for too long to the legacy of Greece and Rome, and he looked to the art of Egypt, Islam, and Asia to renew it. There is a video about his artistic journey based on his journal he left in the model room. So I need you to watch this video to understand this artist's creative viewpoint. Now we're gonna see the art movement after the avant-garde.
Is somebody camera the mic on? It sound like banging or something. I don't know. Okay.
What did you say?
I said I don't know if somebody mic on, but it sounded like banging.
Oh. Everyone, do you want to take a break time now, or okay? It's too long story. Yeah.
Bring on.
All right. Now, how about that? Let's take a 10 minutes break, and then we're gonna continue to see the art movement after the avant-garde, and we have enough time. We're gonna have one more 10 minutes break, and then we're gonna see the postmodernism art. Okay, so let's take a break for 10 minutes. Please, everyone, please come back by 10:58. All right, everyone, please come back. Record of the. All right, let's just continue to see the art movement after avant-garde. In 1 second. So again, the modern art is divided as two, before the avant-garde and after the avant-garde. So we just saw this three art movement: realism, impressionism, post-impressionism, right? Before the avant-garde. And now we're gonna see the art movement after avant-garde, like Fauvism, expressionism, cubism, futurism, dada, surrealism, and idealism. So let's see the avant-garde's meaning in detail. The avant-garde meaning is the first, was originally a military term referring to the detachment of soldiers that went first into battle. Avant-garde, in which a French term means newest, latest, and most advanced art. By the 1880s, the younger artists began to refer to themselves as the avant-garde, and they were the boldest artists going first into uncharted territory and waiting for others to catch up. So newest and change became artistic ideals, and each generation, even each group, believed it was their duty to go further than the one before. So the first art movement after avant-garde we are going to see is Fauvism. In 1904, the artists of the Salon de Rome organized a large exhibition of Cézanne, and in 1906, they mounted a major retrospective of Gauguin, who is the father of the modern art. And then in 1906, but the most notorious exhibit of the Salon de Rome was the one they organized for themselves in 1905, and it was then that a critic dubbed them Fauves, like wild beast. The artist who emerged as the leader of the wild new trend in painting was Henri Matisse. So this is Henri Matisse. He was a draftsman, printmaker, and sculptor, but he's known primarily as a painter. Matisse is commonly regarded, along with Pablo Picasso, as one of the artists who best helped to define the revolutionary developments in the visual arts throughout the opening decades of the 20th century. Responsible for significant developments in painting and sculpture. So during his 5 years Matisse often painted landscapes in the south of France during the summer, and the workup ideas developed there into large compositions upon his return to Paris. So this painting's title is The Joy of Life. How do you think about this painting? What kind of
I see like different women.
all different women's? Yes, yeah, there are nude the women's and men's here. And how do they look like?
Looks like a ring.
Yeah, yeah, they're just here relaxing, pleased. Yes.
It's ironic because by that time, sorry, Professor, to interrupt. It's ironic because back in that time, men were the one who were like seen. Women were the ones who were seen like they had some type of virtual, and they were not supposed to show themselves and all that. But it seems like the woman in this painting is the ones that are empowering.
Yeah.
Instead of being the man that it's like,
Yeah.
And it was painted by a man, so
yeah,
it's ironic.
Yeah, it can be ironic. Yeah, it's just unfamiliar style for us, right? It's kind of shocking. Yeah. So The Joy of Life, the second of his important imaginary compositions, and it is typical of this. He used a landscape he had painted in Korea to provide the setting for the idol, but it is also influenced by ideas drawn from Watteau, Pushing, Japanese woodcuts, Persian miniatures, and 19th century Orientalist images of harems. The scene is made up of independent motifs arranged to form a complete composition. The massive painting and its shocking colors received mixed reviews, just like us, at the Salon des Independents. Critics noted its new style, like the broad fields of color and the linear figures. And this is Henri Matisse' another painting, The Dance. The final version of the dance has a very different emotional character. It has been described as forbidding, menacing, tribal, and even demonic. And drum beats almost seem to be heard as the simple pleasure of the original is overwhelmed. And now let's move on the Expressionism, the second art movement after the avant-garde. The Expressionism's fundamental purpose of art was to express their intense feelings toward the world. That is the most important part for the Impressionism. So Impressionism describes any style where the artist's subjective feelings take precedence over objective observation. So I will show you two artists. The first artist is Edward Munch. Edward Munch is best known as being a Norwegian-born expressionist painter and printmaker. In the late 20th century, he played a great role in German expressionism and the art form that later followed, namely because of the strong mental anguish that was displayed in many of the pieces that he created. So this is his work. So what kind of emotions can you feel through this painting?
Horror?
It's scary.
Exactly. Yes. You know what? The title is The Scream. Yes. So the monk recalled that he had been out for a walk at sunset when suddenly the setting sunlight turned the clouds a blood red. And he sensed an infinite scream passing through nature. And scholars had located the spot to a field overlooking Oslo, and have suggested other explanations for the naturally orange color, the orange sky, ranging from the effects of volcanic eruption to a psychological reaction by Munch to his sister's commitment at a nearby lunatic asylum. And the next expressionist artist is Vasily Kandinsky. He used to be a musician, so his works looks like very rhythmical. Vasily Kandinsky was one of the pioneers of abstract modern art and exploit an evocative interrelation between color and form to create an aesthetic experience that engaged the sight, sound, and emotions of the public. So this is his work, this totally abstract painting. So he believed that total abstraction offered the possibility for profound transcendental expression, and that copying from nature only interfered with this process. And this is, oops, just skipped. Okay, and this is another his painting with geometric shapes and lines. Looks very rhythmical. The next art movement after the avant-garde in modern era is Cubism. Who is the most famous artist of the Cubism? Do you remember?
Picasso?
Yes, Picasso. And there is his friend, Georges Braque. He created the collage technique, right? So the Cubism is a style of painting and sculpture developed in the early 20th century and characterized chiefly by an emphasis on foremost structure, the reduction of natural forms to their geometrical equivalents, and the organization of the planes of a represented object independently of representational requirements. So the most famous artist of Cubism is Pablo Picasso. Yes. So let's see, Pablo Picasso. Pablo Picasso is probably the most important figure of 20th century, right? In terms of art and the art movements that occurred over this period. So therefore, the age of 50, the Spanish-born artist had become the most well-known name in modern art, with the most distinct style and eye for artistic creation. So this is Pablo Picasso's very aggressive style of Cubism painting. Can you guess what is in this painting? What it is?
A woman?
Moving?
A woman.
Moving.
A woman.
A woman. A woman. Yeah, very good guess. There is a person here on the center. Very good. And what the person is doing? Here is.
I don't even see a person.
Right, if you look closer, you think, I don't know if they're sitting down or they're hiding. It's hard to get. You was good at saying that. How did you see that?
Oh, he's so creative, right?
Yeesh.
I got Miss Edwards and I got Miss Jailbreak.
Uh,
Jailbreak.
so I will give you a hint. This top part is head. And this part is body. This is shoulder and this is body. And someone is sitting. This painting shows the torso of someone's. And here is a big hint. Can you guess what it is? This person is holding something.
Did you show where the person is? Because I can't see.
All right. So let me share a video to see, what it is.
In the Pompidou Center in Paris, looking at a painting by Pablo Picasso called The Guitarist from 1910.
This is what is often referred to as analytic cubism.
Analytic in the idea of taking something apart, analyzing the parts of something. And you can see that those look like a jigsaw puzzle where the forms have been disassembled.
It's an abstraction.
The further we stand back from the painting, the more I can see the forms of a man, a head, shoulders, elbows, the fingerboard of the guitar, the wrap.
What did she say? What did she say? He's holding a guitar.
A guitar.
So again, this part is head and shoulder, body, elbow. Probably this is the arm, and fingerboard. The guitar.
Rounded forms of the outside of the guitar.
But I don't think that Picasso meant this to be a puzzle that we're supposed to put back together. Although Picasso is best known for abstracted paintings such as this, it's important to remember that Picasso was something of a child prodigy. He could draw in the academic style beautifully. For the previous 400 or 500 years, Western art had been preoccupied with naturalism, with representing the natural world as carefully and exactly as possible.
Representing the world as it appears to our eyes.
And artists developed a toolkit to do this. This included linear perspective,
using light and shadow to create the illusion of three-dimensional form.
The problem that Picasso faced is that the modern world was one that felt ruptured. Old systems no longer felt valid.
The early 20th century is a time of tremendous upheaval. There is a sense that vision itself is unreliable.
Picasso was grappling specifically with the issue that painting was a kind of illusion, a representation of three-dimensional form and space on a two-dimensional surface.
A system of representation.
So could Picasso invent a new language for representation, but one that was not hiding the two-dimensionality of the canvas, but rather putting that in the forefront? So let's look closely at this painting and see if we can understand how Picasso has done this here. Picasso has simplified the human form.
We see diagonals, horizontals, vertical lines in black. We see circles that intersect.
But it's so abstracted that if we oriented it as if it were a landscape, we might expect to see the rooftops of a village instead of a man holding a guitar.
The fundamentals of perspective that governed Western painting for so long supposed a single viewer fixed in front of a work of art and showed us that view.
And Cézanne in the late 19th century had developed those ideas. Cézanne said, instead of standing in one place, looking from one point in space and time, I actually move around the thing that I'm painting.
Even if you don't move around it, what if you slightly turn your head to the right or to the left? The reality is that one's view is constantly changing and shifting.
And Picasso takes that idea and runs with it. What would happen if you represented this man holding a guitar over time from multiple perspectives?
That's a different kind of truth than the truth that Western painting had given us for 500 years.
So this is not less true, it's just differently true.
Picasso has also emptied the painting of much of its color.
And much of its content. We don't see hands, we don't see a face, we don't see emotion. The things that generally draw us into a painting of a person. What Picasso is interested in instead is the structural logic of the language that he's inventing. And he's inventing it not by himself, but with his compatriot George Braque.
And we still do have some illusion of space. There is a shallow relief here. We have light and shade. We have the movement between those pale tones and darker shadows. So there is a suggestion of a form there. This is not entirely flat, but it certainly is reminding us of the flatness of the canvas that this is painted on.
And as you said, he's reducing color so that we focus on line, on form, on mass, on structure. The colors are reduced to some browns and whites and blacks and perhaps some pale greens.
So we have light and shade that suggests three-dimensional form, and we have overlapping of shapes that also suggests depth.
But not deep space. This is a shallow space, maybe a few inches, just enough for the fractured forms that are represented. It's as if Picasso has taken a series of views of the human body and reconstructed them on the two-dimensional plane.
I find a tension between the title, the guitarist, and the painting itself.
Without the title as a prompt, you'd be hard-pressed to locate the man or the guitar. This is a painting that is about the way that painting itself works. Picasso here is on the edge of abstraction, but this is not pure abstraction. It is not entirely divorced from the world that we see. Throughout his entire career, Picasso remained interested in the tension between what we see and the way in which we depict it.
It was so interesting work of art. All right. So, Pablo Picasso just, simplified all the body parts and reorganized them in this painting. So now let's see a different work by Pablo Picasso. So this is a large oil painting. And look at the size. There is no size. It's a huge and giant painting, and created in 1907 by Pablo Picasso. You can see the original painting in the Modern Art, the Museum of Modern Art in the city. So if you have any chance, I recommend to see the work in person. The work, part of the work, portrays the 5 nude female prostitutes in a brothel on the Avignon. Each figure is depicted in a disconcerting, confrontational manner, and none is conventionally feminine. The women appear slightly menacing and are rendered with angular and disjointed body shapes. These 3 figures on the left exhibit facial features in the Iberian style of Picasso's native Spain, and while the 2 on the right are shown with African mask-like features. So the racial primitivism evoked in this mask, according to Pablo Picasso, moved him to liberate utterly original artistic style of compelling, even savage force. Looks familiar with us, right? On the 26th April 1937, the air force of Nazi Germany bombed the Basque town of Guernica. The attack was carried out in support of General Franco's nationalist forces. It was one of the worst atrocities of the Spanish Civil War. Picasso responded to the massacre by painting the large anti-war mural Guernica. He also made a number of additional paintings of a figure from the mural and a woman holding her dead child. This painting, The Weeping Woman, is the last of this series. The figure is based on artist and photographer Dora Maar, who documented the making of Guernica. In 1914, the conflict broke out in the Balkan Peninsula, and soon, as the result of treaties and alliances every major power in Europe was drawn into war. Soldiers with their heads full of gallant ideas about battle rushed headlong into the most horrible death imaginable. So in 1916, a group of artists waiting out the war in Drag in neutral Switzerland and banded together as a protest art movement called Dada. Dada was anti-art, anti-middle class society, anti-politicians, anti-good manners, anti-business as usual, and anti all that had brought about the war. In that sense, Dada was a big no. But Dada was also big yes. Yes to creativity, to life, to silliness, to spontaneity. Marcel Duchamp was a French-American painter, sculptor, chess player, and writer whose work is associated with Cubism, Dada, and conceptual art. This work is widely regarded as a modernist classic and has become one of the most famous of its time. Before its first presentation at the 1912 Salon des Independents in Paris, it was rejected by the Cubists as being too futurist. We saw this work on the very first day of the course, right? So this work type is called ready-made, by Marcel Duchamp. And ready-mades are ordinary manufactured objects that the artist selected and modified as an antidote to what he called retinal art. So by simply choosing the object or objects and repositioning or joining, titling, and signing it, the found object became art. That was the ready-made. Now let's move on to the next art movement after the avant-garde, surrealism. So surrealism was formulated in Paris in the 1920s, like Dada. Surrealism was not a style, but a way of life. Fascinated by the theories of the psychologist Sigmund Freud, who was then setting out his revolutionary ideas in Vienna, the surrealists associated the power of dreams, the mystery of unconscious, and the lure of bizarre, the irrational, and the incongruous, and the marvelous. So I will show you two surrealism artists. The first artist is Salvador Dali. Dali was a Spanish surrealist artist. And Dali was a skilled draftsman, best known for the striking and bizarre images in his work. His painterly skills are often attributed to the influence of Renaissance masters. So this is his work. How do you think? What you can see through this painting?
I think I've seen this somewhere before.
So how does it look like? Does it look natural or it doesn't? Can you find the meaning of this work? We can see, here some clocks melting, and I guess the background setting is like,
maybe like time going by slow or something. I don't know.
Yeah, very good guess. I love it. Yeah.
It seems like the clocks represents time.
Yes.
And the desert represents like it's melting, like, like maybe around us,
Yep.
I don't know how to say it per se, but I don't know how to explain myself, but it seems like, you know, if we don't have enough time, like it's gonna melt away.
I love it. Yeah, it can be very good. So the iconography may refer to a dream that Dali himself had experienced, and the clocks may symbolize the passing of time as one experiences it in sleep, or the persistence of time in the eyes of the dreamer. Here is an orange clock at the bottom left of the painting is covered in ants. The ants, a common theme in Dali's work, represent decay, particularly when they attack a gold watch, and they seem grotesquely organic. And the monstrous flash, the creature here dragged across the painting center, is at once alien and familiar. An approximation of Dali's own face in profile. This is his face, and its long eyelashes seem disturbingly insect-like or even sexual, as does what may or may not be tongue oozing from his nose like a fat snail. So I'm going to share a video about this work to see it closer.
In modern art, there is this tiny painting by Salvador Dali, which is the painting that everybody wants to see. That and Starry Night by Van Gogh are the two stars. And I thought it would be really interesting to talk about why this painting is so wildly popular. So this is The Persistence of Memory by Salvador Dali.
And here, I understand why people kind of connect to it now. I mean, anybody who's ever tried to make an album for a rock band is inspired by Salvador Dali. There's also this kind of fun of what are you looking at? He's really playing with reality. You know, it's kind of like a visual brain teaser.
Is that it? Is it so popular? Is it on album cover art because it's this attack on the rational, and that's such a seductive idea?
Yeah, it's mind trippy. I like the way you phrase it. It's an attack on the rational. I mean, I guess there might be more to it. That's my sense.
You know, you're talking about album cover art and posters on, you know, maybe a dorm room. And what's interesting is that these artists took these ideas really seriously. This was surrealism. This was painted in 1931. Dali, this Spanish artist, this Catalan artist, had just come to Paris and had joined the surrealist group.
I'm assuming he's considered significant because he was the first person to essentially do dreamscapes and these, as you mentioned, attack on the rational.
When you walk into this painting visually, you enter into this really deep, open, and lonely space. And it's this really quiet image.
Yeah, it's kind of this desert scape, ignoring the melting clocks for a moment. You feel that, okay, if you were in this landscape, yes, time really does not really carry a lot of weight. You could just kind of wither there and die and no one would care. Even that kind of water in the background, there's no waves in it. It's like they've had time to settle down. There's literally no activity.
There's this unbearable sense of quiet. There is almost no movement. And I think it does feel very desert-like, very hot. Literally, time has melted, right? But we have this absurd environment. We do have this very naturalistic rendering. But the things that are being rendered are not naturalistic at all. And imagine the dead tree on the left, but it's growing out of something that seems clearly man-made or at least geometric, a tabletop perhaps. You have ants that seem to be eating and attracted to a piece of metal as opposed to a piece of rotted flesh.
Oh, that's what that is. I couldn't fully make it out. Okay, so they're eating away at a timepiece. That's fascinating.
And of course, you have the drooping clocks. And that's such an interesting, evocative idea because time is something that is so regimented. Time is something that rules us, that is so associated with the industrial culture that we live in. And here, it responds to the environment as we respond to the environment.
Well, one, you have that tabletop, and there's another one in the background. And even the way that the light is set up, especially that cliff, it looks like it's sunset. So it's kind of like, hey, just another day has passed. Who cares?
Well, there are some identifiable things. I mean, for all of the absurdity and for all of the impossibility of what we're seeing, there are some things that our historians have recognized. The cliffs in the back are, we think, the cliffs of the Catalonian coast in northern Spain where Dali is from. And so this is his childhood, perhaps. Some art historians have concluded that that strange figure, almost a profile face, can you just make out an eye with extremely long lashes and perhaps a tongue and a nose?
This is the whole optical illusion part of Dali. Yeah, I thought it was like a blanket, but now I completely see it, the eyelashes. I thought it was a duck for a second too. I see the eyelashes and the top of the nose.
Yeah, Dali does that funny thing where one object can actually be several things at once, sometimes really convincingly. Some historians think this is his face, but elusive and very much a kind of dream.
I mean, that goes back to the category of this is more of that kind of Dormu optical illusion type art.
Well, that's right. Surrealism posited that the rational world that we have so much faith in was perhaps not worthy of all of that faith, that the irrational was just as important, but was something that we had sublimated, something that we had tried to drive out of our life. And the way that these artists and writers thought about it was if only they could retrieve the world of the dream. Some of the artists had read Freud. Some of them had only heard sort of secondhand accounts of Freud. But the idea that the dream was a place where the irrational mind came to the fore unrestricted.
This is something that I guess often confronts me is even the notions that how we perceive what we think as objective reality is really based on how our brain is wired. We see these causes and effects. We see linear time. This is how humans are wired. I mean, I think that's what's fun about these type of things. It kind of said, well, you know, look, there's different forms of reality, and who are we as creatures that are wired one particular way to be all that judgmental about what's real?
When people have looked at this painting, they have sometimes, and I think unconvincingly, tried to link it to Feinstein's earlier ideas of the
time dilation and
exactly. And the time is not, in fact, a strict thing. But I think there's more evidence that Dali is thinking about ideas of a philosopher whose name is Bergson, who thought about time as something that was not simply what struck on a clock, but that there was a kind of human time that was more subjective and that expanded and contracted according to our experience.
Time is this thing that sometimes scares us because we completely don't understand it, even though it's kind of the most fundamental component of our existence. We fundamentally don't understand it, and we try to measure it out. We try to constrain it, define it in some way that makes sense to us. Actually, I think that's what this piece is maybe trying to do. Is that like these clocks are stupid. These are just our futile attempts to try to label. It's kind of like if you label something or if you measure something, you feel like you actually understand it, even though you don't.
I think this is that moment when all those safe ideas of objectivity are being blown out of the water, and we're seeing art that is, in some really interesting ways, confronting that.
All right. Now let's move on to the next surrealist artist, René Magritte. So René Magritte was a Belgian surrealist artist. He became well known for creating several witty and thought-provoking images, and often depicting ordinary objects in an unusual context. His work is known for challenging observers' preconditioned perceptions of reality. So this is René Magritte's painting. The piece depicts a sense of reigning men, nearly identical to each other, dressed in dark overcoats and bowler hats, who seems to be either falling down like raindrops and floating up like helium balloons, or just stationed in middle-air as no movement or motion is implied. The backdrop feature here, the red roofed buildings, and mostly blue, partly cloudy sky. The landing credence to the theory that the men are not raining. And many of surrealists' interest in masks, disguises, and what lies beyond or beneath visual surfaces like this Rene Magritte painting. And surrealism offered a personal solution to life during the years following the trauma of World War I, I'm sorry. But in the view of many artists, society, and possibly even human nature itself had to be transformed so that such a horror would not happen again. The art could play a central role in bringing about a better society was a 19th century idea. Yet it found renewed application after World War I in a collective approach. So in the arts, idealism encourages imagination and attempts to realize a mental conception of beauty, a standard of perfection juxtaposed to aesthetic naturalism and realism. The artist of this title, which is a group, artist group, reduced the art to essential geometric shapes and primary colors, just like this, believing that these were universally understood visual language. The most famous artist associated with this title was Piet Mondrian. So Piet Mondrian is a Dutch painter, and he is known for being one of the pioneers of 20th century abstract art, as he changed his artistic direction from figurative painting to increasingly abstract style until he reached a point where his artistic vocabulary was reduced to simple geometric elements. Mondrian's art was highly utopian and was concerned with a search for universal values and aesthetic. So as the year progressed, the lines began to take precedence over forms in Mondrian's paintings. In the 1930s, he began to use thinner lines and double lines like this more frequently, punctuated with a few small colored forms like this, if any at all. So double lines particularly excited Mondrian, for he believed that offered his paintings a new dynamism which he was eager to explore. So I will share one last video to see how he created this, the idealism style painting.
These bold colors and grids are the hallmark of artist Piet Mondrian. But the same artist, still known today for his instantly recognizable patterns, started out painting these. This summer, an exhibit at the Gemeente Museum in The Hague traces Mondrian's path from that to this. Benno Temple, the museum's director, explains.
So in the Netherlands, there has always been a very strong tradition in landscape painting, dating back from the 17th century. And it was almost a golden rule. The horizon was low, so you had 1/3 of the painting being a landscape and 2/3 of the painting being sky with the famous Dutch clouds.
But even in his early career, Mondrian is ready to break the rules.
He has his early painting around 1900, a ditch by a farm, a landscape with the horizon very high, so there's almost no sky. And there is a tree standing in the foreground of the painting, dividing the painting into, you could almost say, squares and lines.
In 1911, Mondrian moves to Paris, where the Cubist painters Georges Braque and Pablo Picasso influenced Mondrian to experiment with increasingly abstract styles. In 1915, Mondrian returns to the Netherlands and joins the Laren artist colony, where he befriends two artists who push him even further toward abstraction. Together, these three participate in the founding of the Distill movement. Like many artistic movements at the time, this group tried to make a definite break from the past. No more Dutch clouds and windmills for these guys. Mondrian calls his style at this time neoplasticism. Mondrian writes,
"This new plastic idea will ignore the particulars of appearance. On the contrary, it should find its expression in the abstraction of form and color, that is to say, in the straight line and the clearly defined primary color."
It all boils down to straight lines and primary colors, the signature Mondrian look you see in stores and on runways today. But despite how far Mondrian's style evolved from Dutch landscapes, it's still possible to see connection to his early works.
Although they're completely different, one is figurative, the other is abstract. You see that it's almost the same division of picture planes. And it's not done on purpose, it's done by intuition.
All right, so that was idealism artist Mondrian's work. So now let's talk about the the last sketchbook project. All right, give me 1 second. Let me share the last sketchbook project slide. All right, so this is it. So everyone, this is the last our sketchbook project, the transformational self-portrait drawing. So let's see what it is. So this is basically based on the what we just learned, the modern art movement. All right. So so we've learned the history of Western art so far, right? And we saw it. It shows the dynamic changes for thousands of years. But when we just highlight the centuries, we can simply divide into two big threads of art styles, like the representational art and non-representational art. So the representational art, just like this, Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa. So it is a type of recording in which the scenery information about a physical object is described in a medium. So representational art means an observational and the figurative art. So we're gonna make a self-portrait. So I'm gonna share diverse self-portrait styles for understanding the representational art and the non-representational art. So there are lots of representational self-portrait styles in the history of Western art. So let me share the examples. So this is Rembrandt's self-portrait painting now. And this is a Chuck Close representation of self-portrait. This is a painting, acrylic painting. It's a giant self-portrait painting. And this is a Frida Kahlo's self-portrait with an exotic background. And this is a Vincent van Gogh's self-portrait. Still, these are, I know the artist has the, a unique brush stroke and styles like Frida Kahlo and Vincent van Gogh, but still these artists are self-portraits are based on the observational art, means representational art style. And Salvador Dali, the surrealist artist we just saw, that's he is a self-portrait. So now let's see the non-representational art. So this type of art, this is a Vasily Kandinsky, the expressionist artist painting we just saw, and this type of art is called non-representational art. So there are many non-representational art styles. So it can be abstract, non-figurative, or non-objective, or non-realistic, or imaginary art styles. So let me show you the non-representational self-portrait style. So this is Chuck Close's another self-portrait in a non-representational way. So he used abstract motif in the grid lines to paint himself. And this is very, looks like very aggressive self-portrait drawing. Can you guess whose self-portrait is?
Picasso?
Yes, very good. Yes, this is a Pablo Picasso's Cubism style self-portrait. Very good. And this is Basquiat's self-portrait. It looks like a scribble art, but it's also non-representational style art. So we learned many of modern artists today, and I said they've already mastered the traditional style, just like Pablo Picasso. This is Pablo Picasso's self-portrait. So look at the left one. Looks very realistic. He already mastered the traditional drawing skills, like in representational style. But because of photograph's invention, they abandoned the traditional style and sought new style of art. So like this, so we can see his work change process from the representational to the non-representational. So as the camera was developed, there are many diverse art movement arose after the avant-garde, right? So the art movement is called the avant-garde, means newest art. We just learned all of this art movement, right? So before the avant-garde, there were realism, impressionism, post-impressionism, right? But those art movements were still based on observational. However, after avant-garde, the non-representational art movements arose because the representational art was not meaningful anymore, thanks to the camera's invention. So we just learned many art movements. So let me just quickly remind you this non-representational style of art. So this is Fauvism, and Expressionism by Edward Munch, and Expressionism by Vasily Kandinsky, and Cubism by Pablo Picasso, and another Cubism work by Pablo Picasso, and Marcel Duchamp, the Dadaist artist, and the Surrealist artist Salvador Dali. The Surrealist artist looks like realism, but it doesn't. They describe the dreamlike images. It's not realistic images. And here's another surrealist artist, René Magritte. And the last the idealist artist, Piet Mondrian. So now we are going to do the transformational self-portrait drawing, just like the Pablo Picasso did, based on what we learned in the modern art chapter today. So here is the transformational self-portrait drawing process. Step 1. Please draw yourself in the representational style, which means the, observational style, like just a plain, self-portrait drawing, or you can just take a picture of yourself instead of drawing yourself. Okay. And step 2. Choose one of the modern art style after avant-garde, because you're gonna make 2 different style of self-portrait. One can be the representational style, and the other one can be non-representational style. So you're going to choose one of the modern art style we just learned after the avant-garde, right? So choose one of them. And step 3, transform your representational style self-portrait drawing or your self-picture into the non-representational style based on the modern art style you choose on a new sheet of sketchbook. And step 4, finish the abstract self-portrait and color it. So you must show 2 different styles self-portrait when you submit for this project with the short description and which modern art movement style you apply. So for this project, you will need a sketchbook, pencil, eraser, color medium, and a camera. If you want to take a picture of yourself instead of drawing the representational self-portrait. Again, please post the 2 styles of your self-portrait, the representational and non-representational style of self-portrait with the short description. And please write which modern art style you apply into the non-representational self-portrait drawing. So,
can you explain a little further? Because I heard you say a camera for self-portrait, but I don't know what's a non-self-portrait.
Okay, so so the non-representational self-portrait means like abstract style of painting. I was just meant to show you the examples. Okay, I will show you the examples soon. All right, so again, these are the options for the non-representational art style in the modern era. So like the Fauvism, Expressionism, Cubism, Dada, Surrealism, and Idealism. So so like Sanaya, you asked me, the representational self-portrait style are so popular, so you can just take a picture yourself instead of drawing yourself. So I'm gonna just show you the abstract self-portrait examples, so you will get some inspiration how to make your non-representational self-portrait. Okay, so like this. This is a Cubism style self-portrait. And here is another Cubism style self-portrait. And also this is a Cubism style self-portrait.
So this is the non-representational.
Yeah, it's like an abstract self-portrait. Does it make sense?
Okay, sometimes it's better to like see it to kind of get a better understanding of it. So that's why I asked to see an example. But I understand.
So basically you're going to make 2. One can be just, you can just take a picture of yourself, and the other one will be the abstract style of self-portrait, and you're going to choose this style, the artist style from the art movement after the avant-garde we just learned. So this is a Cubism style. We learned the Cubism, and this is an also Cubism style, and this looks like an expressionism style, right? To show the someone else feeling to the world. And this one is also expressionism style. So you don't need to draw exactly just like you. You can just show your feeling. You can just make some, something like, colorful texture on your drawing. It doesn't matter, okay? Or you can just, make some, repositioning your face, on the, your work, just like the Cubism. This one is also expressionism style self-portrait. And this one is Cubism style self-portrait. And also this one is the Cubism style. And this one is the Cubism and Expressionism style. You can mix some of the artworks, okay, some of the art movement in your drawing. You don't need to stick to the one style of art movement after the avant-garde. And this one looks like a Fauvism style, it looks like a wild animal. This one also the Fauvism style. Also Fauvism style. Just like this, you can make the color work. You can make the black and white work, doesn't matter. Or you can use the any digital tool if you want. And this one is the surrealism style. Looks like a very skilled drawing, but the image is like an imaginary, a self-portrait. So this is a surrealism. And this one is expressionism, just like the Vasily Kandinsky, like with the musical notes. And this one is surrealism style. Also, this one is surrealism style. It looks like a dreamlike. It's nonsense concept. And this one is Dada style. And also expressionism style. So you can use just a line like this, It can be also very great expressionism style self-portrait. You don't need to make, very fancy. That's not the non-representational style art. And this one is the expressionism and the cubism style. All right, so that's it. Any question about the last sketchbook project? So I guess these examples are going to be really helpful, to make the abstract self-portrait for you, right? All right. Then let's go back to the model room. All right. So by tonight, I need you to post your self-portrait process. The transformational self-portrait process. You can just take a picture yourself and then post it, and then just write what your plan is for the non-representational self-portrait. Okay. And here is another participation activity, the discussion. You know what, everyone? The time is running out, so I don't want you to hold the longer time. So I'm gonna post the next chapter's recorded video in the Moodle room, so you can watch it anytime, okay, after this meeting, and then you will see the pop art movement in that recording, okay? Then please reply to your this discussions topic. So this is the topic. Let's just read it together. The pop art arose in 60s and 70s after the modern art movement, and I'm going to just briefly explain it. So we just learned the modern art and the foundation of the modern art from the Louvre Museum in Paris. So the art was in the Europe, and now the art trend shifted to the United States after the foundation of the Museum of Modern Art in New York. So the pop art was the one of them in the United States. So you will see three pop artists: Andy Warhol, Roy Lichtenstein, Jeff Koons, and they use the America's popular culture for their work of art. Please discuss America's or your home country's popular culture, and tell us your favorite popular culture with the brief reason. So it can be, comic or movie or, the way of life, anything you can just choose and just share why you think that is the popular culture in the United States or in your home country. Okay, I'm gonna post the next chapter's recording here in the discussion as well, and then I'm gonna post the recording in the front page of the week 14 here as well. Okay, so and again, I'm gonna post, I just recorded this meeting session, so you can review it anytime. And then I'm gonna post the today's recording here as well. And now we have one thing to talk about. You will see the final sketchbook submission on the turning page in the next week session. So I need you to finish all the artwork done so far, because you're gonna submit it by May 3rd, Monday, midnight. So I need you to get prepared, okay? So here's the thing. So we've just made 7 pieces of artworks, and please submit at least 5 finished artworks to get the full point, okay? And if you submit all of the 7 pieces complete work, then you will get extra credit on your final grade. So that is a huge opportunity to upgrade in your grade. And again, the due date is Monday, May 3rd by midnight. And I will let you know how to make the final sketchbook submission file. So when you go to week 15, you will see this one, final sketchbook submission form. I've already made the form, so you can just finish your work, take a picture of your finished work, and then copy and paste in the form, and then just upload your file in this turning page. Okay, so let me share it.
So, Professor, if you want to submit it before the term, can you do that?
Yeah, of course. Why not? Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You can submit it in advance. Okay. And so this is the form. So you can just change your name now here, okay? On the cover page. And this is our first project, the logo design, right? And just take a picture of your finished work and paste here, and then write a short description about your work. It doesn't need to be long. I just need to see a couple of sentences about your work. Or you can just copy and paste from the your discussion postings, okay, in the Moodle room. Is totally okay. Don't get pressure about the description. And the next one is asymmetrical drawing. So you can track all of your work in the Moodle room. So because I provided the numbers, okay. So the first number means week 4 in point 1, and the third one is collage work. And the fourth one is photography. The fifth one is morphing drawing. And the sixth one is hand drawing. And the last one is transformational self-portrait. So for this, the last one, we are making 2 self-portrait, right? So I need you to paste 2 over your self-portrait images here. Okay. Does it make sense? Yep. All right. So when you click this file, you will see this form. So you can just, copy and paste your finished work image in this file, and then just upload this file in the turning page in week 15. All right. Any other question, everyone? You guys look very exhausted. Was too long session, I know. I'm sorry. All right. Shania, I think the connection, your connection is not stable. I can't hear you.
Exhausted. I just said exhausted.
I'm sorry, Sanaya. I can't hear you. Can you send me an email or send me?
It's okay.
I'm sorry. All right. So everyone, again, I'm gonna post the next chapter's recording in the Moodle room. I need you to watch it for the final, okay? And next week, you said you're so exhausted. I'm sorry. Okay, so please.
Will we be doing a review next week?
Yes, we're gonna review all the chapters next week. Okay, so I need you to watch the next chapter's recording before you join the next meeting. Okay, otherwise it's really hard to understand. Okay, because for the review, I'm gonna just find the point for the finals. Okay, I'm not gonna explain the details. All right. All right, everyone. So have a great weekend and see you next week. And sorry about that, for the missing last session.
It's okay. Thank you.
Have a great day.
Have a good weekend, Professor. Thank you.
Bye.
Take care, everyone.